Thank you, Mr. Goodrich.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was the last of the applicant witnesses.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, is the department ready to call its first witness?
Yes, we are.
Please do so.
The department calls Glenn Keith.
Oh, definitely. I need to catch up. Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Keith.
Good afternoon.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing
I do.
but Mr. Dingle?
Good afternoon, Mr. Keith. Could you state your name, please?
Glenn Keith.
Where do you work, sir?
I work at the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection.
And what's the business address?
1 Winter Street, Boston, Massachusetts, 02108.
Sir, have you submitted pre-filed testimony on behalf of the department in this matter?
Yes, I have.
Do you have a copy of that testimony with you?
Yes, I do.
Have you signed that testimony under the pains and penalty of perjury?
Yes, I have.
Do you wish to make any corrections to the testimony?
I have, on the rebuttal testimony, I have 2 small corrections.
Could you tell us what those are? please?
On my rebuttal testimony on page 2, paragraph 2, there's, it says the Rhode Island State Health Laboratories analyzes VOCs using U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's method TO15.
Excuse me? You need to speak into the microphone.
Is it working?
There it is.
So if, just replace the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's method TO15 with VOCs by GCFID and GCMS.
Can you say that again
Sure.
very slowly?
Yeah.
Indicate what you're crossing off
Okay, so
and what
crossing
you're
off,
replacing.
after using, in that, so instead of saying using the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's method TO15, it would say using VOCs by GCFID, those are all capital letters, and GCMS, all capital letters.
Are you crossing off the statement with regard to US EPA's method T015?
Yes. So it's just making the method used more accurate. And then on page 4, there's just a typo in paragraph 4. The last sentence, alpha analytics, should be alpha analytical.
Any other corrections?
No.
Sir, do you adopt with the corrections your pre-filed testimony in this matter?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Keith is available for cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr.
I'll just remind everyone to please keep your voices up so that the people sitting on the chairs can hear not only the witness, but the questions being asked.
I'd just like to start by saying thank you for taking the time. I know staff has a lot going on and probably don't want to be here, but we're glad that you're here. So let's start actually with Exhibit 4 to your testimony. I think it has handwritten on the top of the document, Exhibit 4. And you can turn to that. Let me know if you're there.
You're referring to the pre-filed direct?
Yes.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Okay, I got it.
And just to make sure we're on the same page, this is the August 1989 document concerning the air toxics implementation update, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of any documents concerning the air toxics program that predate this document?
I'm not aware of any.
So the earliest document you're aware of is an update.
Yes.
You know what it's an update to?
No.
This, you correct me if I'm mischaracterizing you, I understand that this is the document the department relies upon when reciting to its long-standing protocol for considering only the point source, the facility's emissions, when applying the air toxics, AALs and TELs. Is that fair?
I would say that this document establishes that since 1989, it has been our practice to do that. I don't believe that people actually read this document anymore. It's rather dated.
Okay. Is there a newer, so in other words, newer in time document that says the same thing?
No.
And you're not aware, as you just testified, of any documents predating this document. So are there, just to have a clean record, are you aware of any documents predating this document that would recite that protocol?
No.
So this, to the best of your knowledge, is the only document, the only written document of any kind in MassDEP that says that.
To my knowledge, yes.
I understand through the public records law that it's available to the public. But do you know, is this available on MassDEP's website?
I do not believe it's on MassDEP's website, but I don't know for sure.
So I just want to be clear then that when MassDEP says they have a long-standing protocol of doing this, the only documentary record I can use to confirm that is this, say myself on the head with it, 1989 update document.
No, you could refer to plan approvals that have been issued over the past years that would all reflect the fact that toxics modeling does not include background. So there's all that documentation.
When you say reflect that, can they explicitly say that?
Don't know.
Can you point me to a single plan approval that says that explicitly?
No, I can't. Other than the one in this proceeding.
Maybe a couple pauses of trying to self-edit given our time constraints, so I apologize for that. Were you involved in the decision to model air toxics with this particular facility?
No.
You just have a moment, Mr. Rothschild.
Sure.
Like I said, we're trying to self-edit here. Let me ask, actually, do I understand correctly that the department considered the health impact assessment, at least in establishing some conditions that were in this air plan approval? Is that something within your knowledge?
Yes.
What specific conditions would it be relevant to?
Well, in the HIA, there were a number of suggestions relative to the permit that were recommended. And I believe some, or if not all of those, were actually incorporated into the permit, but I don't have the.
Without reciting to the specific conditions, could you just give me the subject matter generally about what those would be, so I get a sense of?
One had to do with construction, trying to mitigate construction sound or dust. I'm just recalling from memory. The other one was enhanced notification of case venting blowdowns. And those are just two that I can recall.
Anything relevant to the air toxics?
Not that I can recall.
You said you weren't involved in the decision to model air toxics for this particular facility. Were you involved in the implementation of the air toxics?
No.
Okay, so just to be clear, you don't have any personal knowledge that of the specific air toxics modeling that happened for this facility. Is that a correct statement?
Well, I knew they were doing it.
You knew they were doing it. Okay, that's fair. But beyond knowing they were doing it, you don't have any additional knowledge about the specifics of this.
Well, that they were doing, I guess, all the toxics that they could. For which there were AALs and for which the proposed compressor station would be emitting emissions.
Do you agree with me that the ambient allowable limits and the threshold exposure effects limits, the AALs and the TELs, represent MassDEP's policy judgment about acceptable risks?
In the context of air permitting, it would be acceptable incremental risk.
Okay. Acceptable incremental risk. And for cancer, when we're setting an NTEL, that's at 1.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry. I said, and for cancer, when we're talking about the NTEL, that's at 1 in a million. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Keith. Ms. Rothschild, nothing further at this
Mr. Goldrosen or Mr. Hayden?
I'll go ahead, I think I just, a series of questions, and they all relate, I think, to paragraph 8 in your direct testimony. And I think this follows up on previous line of questioning. So, you stated the long-standing practice of protocol. What is your understanding, well, let me back up. Is there any document that beyond stating what the policy is, states a rationale for that policy? Reasoning for that policy? Are you aware of any DEP document that states that?
No, I'm not.
What is your understanding that as member of the staff of DEP, you need a person in the management position, what's your understanding of the rationale for that policy?
I think, well, my understanding is that the AALs and TELs are very conservative levels representing de minimis risk. And therefore, if a facility is going to contribute less than a de minimis risk, then that would be permittable under our air program. So it's related to the de minimis risk. Level.
Fair enough. The levels that are specified, again, I understand it's about considering values, I believe that's the word DEP uses. The values that are specified for allowable emission limits, do those same, and that are based on a risk of 1 in a million, do those same values apply to background concentrations in the background air?
Not to my knowledge, no. I mean, the ALs and TELs are not, standards that all Massachusetts air is supposed to meet in the ambient air. That was not their intent.
So are there any standards for the air toxics for background levels in Massachusetts?
No, there are not.
towards the bottom of page 4, in your paragraph 8 that I was referring to towards the bottom of page 4, you do have a sentence, however, the risk of experiencing an adverse effect increases with the frequency and severity of exposure. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Right. So, even if there are no standards for levels in ambient or background levels, would you agree that a higher level increases the risk as compared to a lower level?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Mr. Hayden?
Thank you, Mr. Rothschild. Mr. Keith, may I turn your attention to paragraph 8 of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes.
You referred to the pre-filed direct testimony of Justin Fickus.
Yes.
Did you also review Mr. Fickus's rebuttal testimony?
I think I did.
Do you recall, and I'm not going to ask you to cite it from memory, but in his rebuttal testimony, Mr. Fickus quoted language from 82 Federal Register 5198, 40 CFR Part 51, Appendix W, the guideline on air quality models.
Do I recall that?
Yes.
No.
I'm just showing the witness that testimony for Mr. Fickus.
That was page 19 of his rebuttal testimony.
It was paragraph 50 of Mr. Fickus. Yes.
On page 19. Can you indicate what page?
I believe it's page 30.
30.
Thank you. And my question is less focused on Mr. Fickus's testimony, but more on your familiarity with that Appendix W. Is that a guideline that you're familiar with?
No.
What is your role with the DEP?
I'm the director of the Division of Climate, Air and Climate Programs.
And is the director of Air and Climate Programs, you're unfamiliar with the EPA's guidance on air quality models?
I rely on staff that are experts in these issues. I'm not an air quality modeler, so I have never sat down and read Appendix W. But the people who do the modeling have read it, and so I'm familiar. I know it exists. I know general concepts, but I do not make modeling decisions.
Fair enough. Well, I will not get down into the weeds with you on modeling decisions. Let me just ask you if you're familiar with the general concept. Do you see in that quoted language from Appendix W the sentence that begins rather?
Yes.
Can you read that for us, please?
It says, rather, the identification of nearby sources to be explicitly modeled is regarded as an exercise of professional judgment to be accomplished jointly by the applicant and the appropriate reviewing authority.
Is that a general concept you're familiar with?
Yes.
Did the department discuss the identification of nearby sources to be explicitly modeled with the applicant?
I believe it did.
Were you involved in those discussions?
No.
Are you aware that nearby sources of air toxics were not required to be modeled by the applicant?
Yes.
If I could have that page back, Mr. Keith. Thank you very much. If I could turn your attention now to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony. Paragraph 6, which begins on page 5 and runs to page 6. you actually speak to this same issue. And would you read the last full paragraph of your testimony, just above where you signed under pains and penalties of perjury?
The last full paragraph.
Yes, please.
I know of no other state that considers background levels of air toxics in their permitting programs. Furthermore, the background levels referenced by the petitioners are not relevant to the plan approval decision at issue here.
What about your function with the department qualifies you to make that statement under oath?
Because I don't know of any other state that has air toxics background in permitting. And I know that we do not use background levels in air toxics modeling, so it would not be relevant.
Are you involved in that decision-making process?
Which
What
process?
decision-making process?
To not use background levels of air toxics in modeling?
No, but it is our standard practice, and it's been that way for decades.
So, your statement of being unaware of any other state isn't because you've been heavily involved in that area with the department. Is that fair?
Yes, it's fair.
So I'll tell the one copy for the witness, one for you, and copies for counsel, and I won't begin any questions until Nick has it in hand.
Could you identify for the record what you have passed around, please?
Yes, for the record, this is a memo to the Cleaner Air Oregon Regulatory Reform Advisory Committee from DEQ and OHA dated October 12, 2016. It listed with the subject of cumulative risks and background from the Oregon Health Authority. And for ID, what number are we up to?
23.
Mr. Keith, Nick, do you have yours?
Yes.
Mr. Keith, I expect you have not seen this document before.
Not that I recall.
Let me know if I'm...
No, I don't think I have.
So I do want to give you an opportunity to review it, so take all the time you need.
Okay.
if you'd like, Mr. Keith, I can direct your attention to certain portions of the document that I intend to ask you about, but I do want to be fair to you, not having seen the document, to let you have a chance to look through it.
Yeah, I'm still reading that.
Does the department have any objection to Mr. Keith reading the document?
No.
You ready for us?
I'm still reading, sorry.
No problem. Ms. Rothschild, if he's going to be 2 more minutes, do you mind if I take a quick trip to the bathroom?
Why don't we go off the record for 5 minutes? That'll give you enough time.
Yeah, monitor, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I've asked Ms. Kearney to print out the document that Attorney Hayden needed at lunchtime, and she's going to bring it.
Thank you, Ms. Rothschild. And I don't know if we assigned a number to it.
Not yet.
Okay.
which is untrue though. It's not using the data, it has to treat that. Yes. Oh, they because they didn't have ports. Yes.
Start please.
No, I'm just thinking he wants to wait for your comments. I'll wait for these work. You told me to do the conservation. Thank you.
Was this work?
It was agreed to come in, but it hasn't been assigned a number yet.
Yeah, I don't think we want it.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Rothschild, just for when we go back on to, there was the other exhibit that had been deferred. We don't have any objection to it.
You do not have any objection. Okay. Mr. Cramb, this was Mark.
Just to sit down. Yes, great, thank you.
And that was 22, I
And it
believe.
was 22. And the recorder is going to hang on to all the exhibits. She's going to take them with her.
Should we do that on the record?
Yes.
Sorry, Vince. I didn't expect to cause this long interruption in proceeding. There you go. Glass half full.
On the appendix.
Excellent.
Okay.
Mr. Keith, showing you what has been marked for identification as number 23. Have you had a chance to review this document?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to draw your attention first on page 1. What is the title of the appendix on this document?
How do other states account for risks from multiple air toxics, multiple sources, background, or cross-media pathways?
Thank you. And if I could turn your attention to page 10. Would you read the title of program element 9 in that first paragraph, please?
Yes, cumulative risk from multiple sources within an area.
And the first paragraph?
Oh. Some communities have air quality impacts from multiple industrial facilities. Different programs approach cumulative risk from multiple industrial facilities within an area in different ways. Out of the 6 air toxics programs reviewed in depth, Washington's program requires facilities to consider background risk in their permit. And one of the ways they are allowed to estimate background is by modeling emissions from other industrial sources emitting the same air toxics within 1.5 kilometer radius. New York incorporates cumulative risk from multiple sources in the area in the calculation of maximum allowable off-site impact. Rhode Island does not consider cumulative risk from multiple sources in an area.
And I believe you referenced Rhode Island in your rebuttal testimony, correct?
Correct.
Were you familiar with the status of reviewing multiple sources of air toxics in the states of Washington and New York?
No.
Has the department undertaken a survey of states around the country that do consider cumulative risk from multiple sources of air toxics?
None that I know of.
If I could turn your attention to page 11. Do you see the heading entitled Summary of Considerations for Cumulative Risk from Multiple Sources Within an Area?
Yes.
Would you read the first paragraph and the first 2 bullet points, please?
This is preliminary information DEQ and OHA have gathered in discussion with the technical work group. The Environmental Justice Task Force, public comment, and from experience in the air program. This information should be considered the starting point for further advisory committee discussion and input, including cumulative risk from nearby industrial facilities in the permitting program. Is it first 2 points?
And the next bullet point, please.
Is more protective of human health sensitive populations and overburdened communities than not including it, and better represents the air people are actually breathing.
Do you agree with that statement?
Generally, yes.
If I could turn your attention to page 12 of this document. Under the heading Program Element 10, Use of Background Concentrations in the Assessment of Risk,
Yes.
could you read the paragraph beginning the Washington program?
The Washington program requires that background concentrations of toxics be considered along with assessment of potential health risks related to facility emissions in the second tier of their risk-based program. Recent additions to the New York rules stipulate that the National Air Toxics Assessment data be used to identify background air toxics risks in the ambient air and considered along with potential risks related to facility emissions.
Were you aware of those components of the Washington and New York program?
Not specifically.
Is that type of information helpful to you as director of the Division of Air and Climate Programs?
Yes, it is. I'm aware that various states have, thought about this issue. But one thing to keep in mind is that, and I can't tell from this document, it doesn't look like Oregon has actually adopted anything yet. I don't know. But I did notice in the discussion with Rhode Island where states do, at least Rhode Island, which I wasn't aware of, when they, to the extent that they address toxics, they use a different risk management standard.
Fair enough.
So there are different ways to address toxics.
Agreed. And in the appendix to the document marked for ideas number 23, there's a table of different states in answer to the question, how do other states account for risks from multiple air toxics, multiple sources, background, or cross-media pathways, correct?
Yes.
And is that information helpful to you as Director of Division of Air and Climate Programs?
Yeah, as a starting point, yes.
And the reason I ask is, It sounds like from your testimony, you were aware that other states have at least discussed these topics.
Yes, I've heard it come up.
Because your testimony at paragraph 6 of your rebuttal testimony,
Yes.
that last paragraph above signed under the
Yes.
penalties of perjury, you didn't use the word requires or implements. You actually used the word considers.
Yes, I meant requires.
Okay, so considers is too broad to be truthful, correct?
Yes. I meant like in their actually permitting that they require that you must include background level.
And now you know of a few states that do, correct? Based upon review of this document?
Objection.
Sustain. Rephrase this.
Okay. Now you're aware of the Oregon Health Authority's memorandum that addresses how other states account for risks from multiple air toxics, multiple sources, background, or cross-media pathways, correct?
Objection. This document has not been authenticated. This could be somebody's typing exercise.
I don't have an Oregon witness, Mr. Rothschild. Mr.
Let me
Keith.
rule on the objection.
Sure.
Mr. Dingle, I understand the concern. Let's assume, I'd like the question answered, but we're going to presume that this is authentic for the sake of this answer. And that I want to hear what he says. I don't know, and I agree, these things can be produced. Mr. Hayden, can you identify where you obtained this? And how you obtained this?
Thank you, Ms. Rothschild. It is available on the Oregon.gov website.
Do you have a
And
link?
I do. Ms. Rothschild. It's a mouthful, so I'll read it slowly. https://www.oregon.gov/DEQ//rulemaking/20.20.20.173 cumulative risk.pdf. Oh, and Ms. Stock has offered, given she's connected to Wi-Fi, to email the document to the distribution list to the extent that's helpful.
Would that be helpful?
It's a citation, but again, I don't think that fulfills the authentication.
Well, if somebody pulled a document off the DEP website, would you have a problem with that being considered authentic?
Not if someone confirmed that it was off the DEP website.
Well, if there's a link emailed to the Oregon website where this document is
But no one
found.
from Oregon to authenticate it.
I have trouble with that as a standard, given that people are regularly pulling documents off different states. And I imagine if you question one of the witnesses who previously testified for the applicant who does work in multiple states, I don't imagine they travel to each of the states and they pull documents off every one. And generally, if somebody is looking at the MassDEP website, you would expect they would rely that what they pull off of those websites is reliable.
I'll abide by your ruling. I just wanted to raise the objection.
Okay, objection noted. But until noted otherwise, I am going to presume, given the citation to a website and Attorney Stock verified this, that this can come in. If during the course of the rest of this appeal, you can demonstrate that this document is not authentic, Or if Mr. Hayden, you want to obtain verification that this document is authentic, I will allow that into the record.
Thank you. Mr. Keith, is this document the type of information that your office relies upon in evaluating what other states do in considering background levels of air toxics in their permitting programs?
It could be.
If I could turn your attention to paragraph 2 of your rebuttal testimony, please. This pertains to the Rhode Island air sampling data.
Right.
And I just want to make sure we're on the same page concerning the date sequence. You do not dispute that the department had possession of the Rhode Island lab air sampling data as of December 26, 2018, correct?
Correct. It was emailed to Kathy Weber on that date.
And for purposes of the department's knowledge, upon receipt of that email, the department as a whole had knowledge of the Rhode Island laboratory test results, correct?
Kathy had knowledge. Beyond that, Tom didn't, I didn't.
Well, that's what I'm asking. If we never told you about that data, would it be your position that you don't have to be aware of it?
Objection. Don't have to be aware of it.
Sustained.
Why wasn't this data produced prior to the 10 persons group memorandum of law being filed in this litigation?
I don't know.
You knew about the data as of January 4th, 2019?
Yes.
And the data was not included with the HIA report, correct?
That's correct.
And the data was not included with the air quality plan approval issued 1 week later on January 11, 2019, correct?
That's correct.
Why not?
Because it wasn't relevant to that.
The air sampling data, and am I correct that the air sampling data was taken from the MWRA pumping station, which is a couple of hundred yards from the project site?
Yes.
And it's the department's position that air sampling data collected a couple of hundred yards from the project site is irrelevant to the air quality plan approval as a whole?
Yes, since we do not consider background air toxics, it is.
Okay. Is it a requirement that the applicant model air toxics when applying for an air quality plan approval?
If directed by the department, yes.
Okay, and if not directed by the department, is it a requirement?
No.
So you have some discretion in this area, correct?
Yes, the department does.
And the department exercised its discretion and required the applicant in this instance to include modeling of air toxics with its air dispersion modeling analysis, correct?
Correct.
Why?
That's a question that I cannot answer. That's for someone else to answer.
Are you speaking into the
Is it
mic?
working?
No.
Battery died.
Off the microphone. Battery's good. Doreen has the case.
If it helps, I have one more question that
Yeah,
between
I
the two of
think
us, we might be able to
All right,
audibly.
let's continue.
Okay.
And if everyone can just keep their voices up, particularly you, Mr. Keith.
Okay.
Who is the person in the department who can answer that question?
Tom Cushing.
No further questions.
Does the department have any redirect?
No regret.
Oh, may I, Ms. Rothschild, I understand the back and forth on what was marked for ID is 23. We would move it into evidence, understanding there's an objection to the authenticity. The witness has testified that it is the type of information that could be relied upon by the department in evaluating what other states do concerning modeling other sources of air quality.
Yes, and I'm admitting this over the objection of the department, and this is exhibit 23.
Thank you.
You're complete.
Okay.
Thank you. Just look through the exhibits.
We'll have 22.
22 is the,
Okay, I have it, thank you.